All right, we are here taking a look at a new game called Alien Invasion, The Defense of Corona. And we're going to take a look inside this box to show you some of the components before they're assembled. This is a new game from Strongpoint. It's designed by Michael K. Robel. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. And it is, yes, copyright 2015, Strongpoint Simulation and Modeling. Independent game designer. This is, as you can see from the pictures here and the description, the defense of Corona, California from an alien invasion. It takes place, I believe, in the 1950s. And we'll just take a quick look at what you get inside the box. We have a couple of D6s, one D10. And it looks like there are some counters here. There's a little errata slip. I think these are some counters, maybe with some changes. There are two counter sheets, quite brightly printed, I must say, of your defense forces here for the humans. And here we see some alien ships. Looks like we have some air power as well. And we've got a second counter sheet. Let's see. It's a nice thickness on this counter sheet, double-sided. This looks like the suppressed, or I think he calls it suppressed or wounded side. And second counter sheet has some markers here, I guess for game data. I really have not looked at the rules yet, so I wanted to show you the unpunched counter sheets before I got very far into it. We also have our little instructions here about the errata for the replacement counters. Oh, nice. Thanks, Mike. There's a nice little checklist here of what comes in the box. That's always nice to see. And we've got, looks to be 4 game maps here. We don't yet know whether we put them together. I think we probably do. They are printed nice cardstock, very bright. And we've got a lot of terrain effects here. I'm assuming I don't see a terrain chart. There's probably one somewhere inside. One hopes there's one inside. And so here are the 4 game maps representing Corona, California. We have, let's see. Here is the rule book. And it's a nice 4-color print job here. Description of the counters. We've got some examples of, guessing those are game turn examples. Oh, here we go. Here's the terrain ground features he's got. Table 6, ground features. Sand, orange grove, cultivated field, very detailed. That's nice. And we have some other terrain movement factors. I guess we'll have to look into exactly how that works. We also have 2 books here. These must be the scenario books, the Defense of Corona Human Operations Orders, and I think I saw somewhere, here we go, the Alien Operations Orders. So I'm not going to open those up just yet, but I'm assuming those are more scenario details. And we have some either player aid cards, or here's the phase turn. Gives you, there's a lot of information on the counters, I must say, and here it is again on this card. That's probably going to be pretty handy. And this looks like some other game mats for the alien side as well as for the human side. And looks like we've got perhaps a little bookkeeping to do. I don't know. We've got a landing craft record table with a notice that we're authorized to copy it. So I'm guessing that's going to be some live data that we're keeping. And oh, engineer. Always love the engineers. Engineer tracking records. So we'll have to look into this and see what exactly that maps, but we have some ways of tracking that information. And here we have some player tables with, I guess, some combat results and things of that nature. So these are all printed on pretty shiny, relatively thick paper. Again, nicely high resolution, nice color job here on all of this. And next up, we will set up for play and obviously take a look at the rules and get going defending ourselves against the alien invasion. You're looking at the town of Corona, California, as depicted in the map that comes with Alien Invasion. This is an extremely detailed map of Corona and its environs, and I will be pulling back here just a bit to give you some overview of the map and the terrain around the town. You are going to be trying to protect this town from the alien invasion and ultimately from the alien invaders making their way into LA. As you can see, there is a lot of detail depicted, and now we'll take a closer look at what some of this terrain actually is. So here we are back in the town center of Corona, depicted by the pink areas. And on the map, we have quite a few things going on. We have, in addition to ground features, such as the roads here in red, and we have, let's see, over here, some orange groves depicted by the green squares, and we have some scrub, I think that would be in the green there. We also get some terrain features and some elevation. So moving into the hills here, we see the different gradations of the hexes. These do come into play because line of sight is an issue in this game. So there's a chart with terrain movement factors that will tell you which is the higher elevation, which is going to be impacting your line of sight. Here in the hills, we see some trails represented by the yellow. And obviously here we have some streams. Here we've got, moving along, some more trail area, some more city area or populated areas in the pink. And moving up here, we have a larger body of water. We have the river that flows down. This comes into play a great deal as the aliens are trying to make their way through the map toward LA, following this line. And again, pulling back here, we see more roads. And we have a light-duty road here. I believe that's what that is, and a heavy-duty road represented in red. And here again, we're following the Santa Ana River down all the way and to the southeast of the town, we see and find more hills. So overall, the map very nicely detailed. There are instances when you can use the terrain to your benefit as you attempt to position yourself to fire on the aliens. And then, of course, there are instances when the terrain is not working in your favor. So all this is very realistic and very detailed. Here we have the light green, which is the light scrub. And there is a very handy ground features chart that will give you all the various modifiers that this terrain impacts your movement depending on. When a board game is good and I'm really enjoying it, I think to myself that this is a really great game. When a war game is good and I'm really enjoying it, I think to myself that this is a really great game, but more than that, I think that the game is generating a really great story. Because for me as a gamer, it's the involvement in the story that really engages me with gameplay. And over the course of my gaming life, I have increasingly realized that war games, when they're done well, are very, very effective at generating a story. What I'm showing you here is a totally made-up setup in this game, just to give you some sense of how it looks on the map. This is not coming from any particular scenario in the game, and I'll explain why in a minute. What we're looking at here would depict a confrontation with the aliens in red, having landed, narrowly missing Lake Matthews, which is a prohibited landing space. And instead, they have set down in a sort of mid-level elevation. And the humans, which in this case are represented by some Marines, We'll get a closer look at the counters in a moment, but we've got some Marines here. We have a platoon with some medium artillery that's in some scrub, so they're going to have some inhibited movement. And we also have an infantry unit in some woods, which is also inhibiting. So they're going to be facing some pretty formidable alien fighting machines. But the reason why I'm not showing you an actual scenario setup has to do with the first of what I think are 3 design choices that the game designer made to really enhance the story and enhance your sense that you are playing out something that is almost like a movie and scenes from a movie. The first thing is that rather than have the scenario setup be part of the rulebook, which is what we often see in war games, we are given these 2 human operation orders, or I should say 2 operation orders packets. We are given an alien operation orders and a human operation orders. These contain the scenario details, and what happens is that it maintains a secrecy as to who has what, and for each scenario, what can be potentially coming onto the map. So at least for the first time you play through the 7 scenarios, you really have no idea what your opponent is going to have access to because it is contained in these operation orders. And I think as a player that really adds to the cinematic feel of this game, and it really does enhance the theme. The scenarios do build up, as you might expect from something I will show you here. The table of contents of one of them, we have our first contact, our second landing, etc. So they do build up, and there is a narrative flow to them. But again, you are really having a preservation of information and secrecy, and it just really enhances the gameplay. I'm going to show you here a fantastic photo that is at the front of the human operations orders, again adding to what really feels like the authenticity and historical nature of something that obviously is fictional. This is a photo of Corona, California from before the battle, and it is quoted as a U.S. Army photo, and it is at the beginning of the human operations orders section. Again, really adds to the authenticity here. So that is design choice number 1 that really gets you into the game. The second design choice that has been made here is to have the rules provide that you enter the map and exit the map as a discrete space. So here we see some Arkansas National Guard ready to enter the map and enter the city of Corona here for defense, and there is a 1 movement point cost to enter the map, and the same holds true for, in this particular case, I've got some air support that is ready to come in on its designated turn, and also there's actually some naval support here with the direction that these can come in from the west on their appointed turn based on the scenario. But this idea that you have your forces kind of lined up and ready to go, I think really enhances this notion that you are actually playing out a scene in a game, and they're exiting as actors do and entering as actors do. And this is an interesting design choice which I think works really well. And the third design choice that really enhances the theme of this game is the most intricate one, and the one we'll spend the most time talking about in a moment, which is the counters themselves and the information on them and what they represent. I'm just showing you a couple here. This is not reflective of any gameplay, but just to give you a little bit of an overview of some of the counters that we have. I'm going to go through some of them in a little bit more detail to give you a flavor for what is offered here, but they are so historically accurate that even though the game is fighting aliens, you really feel like you are involved in a reenactment of something that actually happened. I'm going to talk about some of the basic information on some of the counters. There's a lot of detail, a lot of different units available to the humans, so this will not be comprehensive at all, but we'll just give an overview of some of the information that is contained on the counters and what is represented for the human military units. Here is a Marine unit represented by this blue circle here. They are color-coded with different icons to represent what can support each counter. So the blue is supported by the blue, red is supported by the red for the most part. There's a few exceptions. Up here on the left we have our direct fire data, and then we have the attack fire range, and we have the rate of fire here. Here we've got the movement factor and the indicator. There's three different types of movement that are in the game. The I represents infantry movement. There is also tracked movement and wheeled movement. So those impact the ability to move. In the lower left here, we have the defense factor, and in the lower right corner, we have any special factors that may impact this particular counter. This is the unit name here, and of course the unit symbol in the middle. This particular counter has no special factors. We'll take a look at a couple of other ones and show you what some of them might be. There are also civilian counters or civilians who participate in the defense in various scenarios, and here is one of them. This is going to be representing the police, and again we have the same basic, this is a wheeled unit, this is the W here, same basic configuration, no particular special factor here. This is their defense factor. In general, the human civilian units are not very strong, as you might expect, but they do come in various scenarios to offer support. Additionally, we have some searchlight capabilities, and here is one of them. The S special factor there is going to be indicating that it's a searchlight equipped unit, and we also have some counters that come into play with searchlights to indicate the range of the illumination, and this is all covered in the rules. There are some special rules for the Naval Support units coming in. They don't actually enter the map, of course, but they can fire, generally speaking, from the west, a certain designated amount of distance, and offer support this way. And here's an example of one of the counters. They come in on various scenarios, and again, getting back to the different operation packets that each player has, at least the first time around, the person playing the aliens will not know when this support can come in to the game. I want to take a little more detailed look at one of the civilian support units. These are the engineers from the California National Guard, and the engineers in this game can do a few things. They can place mines as prescribed in certain scenarios. They can bury demolitions that will potentially later be used to damage or destroy the alien ship, and this information is kept on the engineer tracking records that I referred to earlier in the video when I was showing you what came in the box. The human player, the person playing the human side, records what the engineers have done in terms of burying mines and demolitions, and that comes into play as the scenario unfolds, and this is what the engineers can do. Before we take a look at who is inflicting all of this damage, let's just briefly go over different types of damage effects that potentially could occur in this game. There is firepower damage, where the unit affected would end up losing some of its attack factor. There is destruction, where the entire unit is removed. And there is mobility damage, where a unit has an impact of its movement factor, and this can affect both ground and air units. And there is suppression, and when this is, I'm showing you the suppressed side of the counter, represented by this dotted gray line, and this is on the back of all of the counters that can be suppressed. And a suppression, a human unit would lose some movement and rate of fire, and the alien units can also be suppressed as well. They would be losing some movement points, and I believe some defensive factors are reduced as well. If an aircraft is suppressed, because the aircraft counters have suppression suppression markers on them on the backs as well, they need to abort and return to their base. Just want to finish up here showing you a few of the other counters in this game. Again, this is not comprehensive, but I wanted you to take a look at this artwork, which is very nice and thematic, and I think fits with the sort of 1950s feel of the game. There are in the game some flares, and these will be deployed in some of the nighttime scenarios to illuminate an area around the target hex and surrounding hexes. And they're modified in certain ways, will take care of modifications for nighttime combat. There is nuclear power that, again, are allowed in certain scenarios. There are bombs, there's gas, and here's the indication for that, smoke, and some more bombs here. So these are some of the different munitions effects that happen in the game and the counters that are used to depict them. And now we're going to take a look at what all of this is fighting against, the aliens. So here's a look at some of the alien counters. Of course, on the left here, we have the regular alien fighting machine, and on the right, we have the suppressed version of that. Obviously, two different machines, but this is the suppressed side, and this is the regular side. The counters follow the same basic structure as the other counters. We have the primary weapon attack factor here and range, and then the secondary weapon attack factor and that range. This is the movement factor. Any special factors? I don't actually think any of the alien ships have any special factors. I think this is just a blank for all of them. We have the unit name and the defense factor. But the real key thing to the alien fighting machines I mentioned earlier, which is the fact that they all have shields that go up and down at a certain flicker rate. And the rate is determined through a die roll. We looked at that briefly earlier, and these counters are used to indicate what that flicker rate is. And this becomes very important when you're playing the game, because in order for the human to have a successful attack, they need to penetrate that shield. The shields will deflect attacks, and the human player needs to get in when the shield is down. So otherwise, no attack will be successful. So these are a look at the alien units. There are a number of them with different strength factors, but all the units themselves look like this. The purpose of this video is really to show you what's inside the box, and I've pretty much concluded with that, but I'll just walk you through really briefly overview of the sequence of play. The core of this game is the combat, of course, the encounters, and after the aliens land and deploy, we have the human deployment that happens, and we have the player placing the units that are specified by the scenario onto the map. And then we have artillery and airstrikes and the alien defense phase. We have humans firing and moving and trying to position themselves as best they can to destroy the aliens to stop them from coming into the city of Corona and ultimately moving on to LA. Again, I'm not going to go through anything in more detail than that. Just wanted to give you a look inside the box, a look at some of the counters, a look at some of the artwork here, and a real feel for how this game carries through its theme of a mid-1950s American human defense force trying to stave off an inscrutable and ever-multiplying alien invasion. So that is your look inside the box of this game, Alien Invasion, the Defense of Corona.